So ladies and gentlemen, do join us round the arena. We have about 5 minutes before the Grand Parade of Steam Engines, the annual... Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody on the show field, the moment you've been waiting for. The Grand Parade of the Shrewsbury Steam Rally, the pinnacle of steam preservation in the Midlands today. This cavalcade of steam's great might presents to us a wondrous sight of engines now resplendent made from years of harbouring in the shade. They claim from yard or field or wood, and in their twilight silent stood, with rusting motion and boiler cold. It was for scrap that they were sold. Then in the summer's sweltering scorch, their end it was the burner's torch. But some from this grim fate were taken, the slumbering giants gently awaken. with lavished care from owners new. They are but now the chosen few that represent a lost great power, which we present to you this hour. For these are the engines of an era long past, built by the men whose skills were the last. They made them strong, to give of their best. In aging years, they do not rest. They still drive on, with fiery soul, and beating heart that scorns control, with burnished limbs of shimmering steel, and throb and pulse of circling wheel. With shining paint and polished brass, all other machines they did surpass. But for all this grace and beauty, they were made for man's duty. Hauling with ease, the teams form a load. Others were the sons of soil. From ploughing to thrashing they eased the toil. Then came the showman, with engines so grand, each thought his the best in the land. Yet, with brass and electric light, there came the strength to move the sight. This was part of their calling to man. But what of the homes where they began? Charles Burrell of Thetford, the true Norfolk breed, while Ransoms and Garretts were Suffolk seed. Next came Lincoln, its four famous sons of Roby, Clayton, Foster and Rustons. Marshals of Gainsborough, in that same shower, they made engines for all to admire. Then, in Cheshire, the land of salt, Fodens were built with never a fault. But with pride, the county of Salop made their sentinels go with a gallop. Further north, in the city of Leeds, Fowlers and McLarens sufficed the needs. From the Garden of England, a prancing horse, Avon and Porter ran the course. Wallace and Stevens, with sprightly 5-ton, Taskers nearby would give it a run. These are a few of the famous breeds, all working the purpose of man's needs. And now to you this hour we bring these engines for their praise to sing. With shrieking whistle and vapour cloud, their aim is now to please the crowd. So let us salute these machines from the past, built by the men whose skill was to last. They made them strong, to give of their best. In aging years, they do not rest. this spectacle. Nearly 98 engines coming into the field. What a spectacle of steam power. Thank you very much for the applause. It is wonderful to share this with you. And I think if you cannot be moved by what you've just seen, then you must have a heart of stone. What a wonderful, wonderful show, even though I may be a little bit biased, but you'll never see anything like this anywhere else in the country now, I think. So what we're going to do for the next half hour, 40 minutes is I'm going to take a walk around the arena and describe to you the engines that you see. So if you're on the south side of the arena and you see an idiot in a hat with a water bottle, it's not only keeping the sun off, it's letting you identify who I am. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the steam engines that are here in front of you. I'm going to walk around the arena and describe the engines that we can see. And then they'll all move a little bit further. You'll see some different engines, and I get to blather a little bit more. So our display today, our parade, is led by the magnificent Showman's engines. They always come into the parade here 2 by 2. The engines come into the arena, pair off, and go around the middle. But they are always led by the glorious Showman's engines. So the steam engine, it's a thing that is powered by steam, the stuff that comes out of your kettle. If you constrict that steam, if you put a plug in the end of your kettle, it'll soon blow out because it builds up a pressure, and the pressure is what is used to make these engines go. It doesn't matter what you burn to make that steam, or if you use electricity, coal, oil, gas, whatever, but that is what basically the principle of a steam engine is. There's a little more technicality, but I won't go into that. What you have, a basic steam traction engine, has a boiler, like a railway engine. It makes the steam. Then it has what's called the engine itself, fitted to the top of the boiler here. Steam cylinders at the front are connected by a system of rods to a shaft there called a crankshaft with a flywheel on it. And then the gears here, you can see if you're in this corner, the gears are connected down to the big rear driving wheel. They are large wheels, they give power down onto the ground. The traction engine gets its name from the Latin tractus, to pull, and these things, if you see them on the move, by hector they pull some weight. That is the basic traction engine. Everything on this field, apart from some of the steam lorries, is the same basic principle of a boiler with an engine on the top of it, driving some gears to the wheel. The rest of it is refinery to do different jobs. Just as with a car or a lorry, you get different types of lorry, you get articulated, you get tankers, you get flatbeds, you get bin lorries, dust sweepers, the whole lot. So it is with the steam traction engine. But the absolute pinnacle of them are these Showman's engines. The majority of the Showman's engines you will see today are this Crimson Lake maroon colour with either yellow or red wheels. The purpose of the Showman's engine was to pull the rides from fair to fair, from town to town. The showman would use them to pull the rides in a broken down form on packing trucks, on carts, trailers behind the steam engine. They would then build the ride in whichever town they got to, and then once the ride was put together, the traction engine has a thing on the front here called a dynamo. Now that dynamo is coupled to the flywheel of the engine with a big belt, and then the engine runs at speed. It's disengaged drive from the wheels, and electric power is made in that dynamo, which is then used to drive the fairground rides. It's also used to light them. Bear in mind, this is the late 19th century, early 20th century when these things are being produced. An electric light is something very new. People went to the fair to go and see the new technology, and you can see some of these engines, they have light bulbs around the inside of the canopies of their roofs, but the majority of the electricity was used to go and drive the fair. The big back wheels also didn't just give the engines power, they gave them speed. You're a showman, you want to get the best pitch on the fairground that you can get. So quite often there are stories of places like the Oxford fairs where they weren't allowed onto the street until 5 in the morning because of the laws of the town, laws of the city, and then they'd line up pretty much as that, but then they would tear hell for leather down St Giles in Oxford so they could get the best spot, get set up and start earning money from the rides as soon as possible. But they also wanted them to look good. This engine doesn't have to look like this to do its job, but you look at it and it's magnificent. Wait and See here is very unusually presented in this yellow colour. Now, we said earlier that a lot of the Showman's engines, most of the Showman's engines are painted in the Crimson Lake, and they look magnificent. There's gold leaf on them, there's brass, there's copper, and they really stand out. But if you're a showman and you really want to make yourself stand out, you paint your engine yellow. And that's what Crowther and Johnson's did. Flying Pigs on Tour, yes, that really was a fairground ride. When people say, you know, flying pigs make happen, well, they did. But they were powered by steam. It's not a particularly practical colour, and I'm not entirely sure how the Thwaites family get on with cleaning it now. How many hours does it take? Too many. Weeks, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, weeks to clean this engine. So it went through a number of different owners after Crowther and Johnson sold it, and it ended up with a very famous Midlands showman, Pat Collins of Blockswich. He had it painted a much more traditional maroon colour. But not just did it stand out on the fairground in yellow, it stands out today on our rally field as a yellow engine. I've just had someone describe it to me as a JCB engine. Well, I think it's a little more successful than a JCB. Hopefully it will last, or